everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're doing yet another random ass anime review, and this time we're taking a look at Natsuki Crisis, which is a 2-episode OVA that came out in 1994, and it is considered as a martial arts anime. So with knowing that, you can probably get a very good idea of what this anime is about without me having to explain it, but well, let's just get right into it. So it stars the main character, Natsuki, who happens to love everything about martial arts, and after training for a while, she ends up being late for class, and it turns out that there's a new student that transferred into her class, and that happens to be Rina Takaoka, though I'm just gonna call her Rina for short. So Rina originally came from a school called Johto Academy, which was very well known for having many different martial artists, and of course, our main character has a very interest in her and wanting to be friends with her, but of course she doesn't give a shit. So after a couple attempts, Natsuki ends up meeting her at her motorcycle, and she offers her to walk home, but she's just like, nah, I got a motorcycle, I don't need to fucking walk. But before they're just about to leave, they end up being jumped by a group of people wearing masks, and they happen to be goons that were from Johto Academy. So the reason why she's being jumped by these goons is because some of the people at Johto Academy are really upset with the fact that she happened to leave their school. So they fight off the hordes of enemies, and that's when they realize that they're both very capable fighters, and then they start to kind of get along a little better. So after that plan failed, Johto Academy, at least the small group of people there, end up sending out a dude named Daigo, who happens to be like this huge dude, and he ends up destroying her motorcycle, and when she sees it, she realizes that there is a note there, and it is trying to put the blame on Natsuki, and of course, she gets really pissed at her, and then that's when they basically start to have an actual fight. And just like a lot of animes like this, yeah, eventually they realize who the actual culprit is, and they beat the shit out of him, and then things are kind of like hunky-dory, but then in like the next episode, they send out another character from the school, and that happens to be Akira, and she happens to look a lot like a buff version of Naoto Shirogane for Persona 4. Maybe that's where Atlas got the idea of her character design, but, you know, way less buff. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, you know, like I said, typical martial arts anime, but it does involve a lot of women in it, and of course they just beat the shit out of each other. So I guess you can say it's very much a womanly anime. Yeah, instead of a manly man's anime, it's a womanly anime. And in some aspects, it does sort of remind me of Sekuban Deka, which was another old series about a bunch of schoolgirls beating the shit out of each other. So yeah, let's get moving on to the other things, like the animation. And the animation, for the most part, is pretty consistently good. So as you would expect, the fight scenes are definitely the highlight here, but I do really like the art style in general, but then again, that doesn't come as a surprise since I love a lot of 90s art styles. But the animation flow, for the most part, is pretty consistent, and I do think it does look really good. The only part where I feel like the animation kinda took a little bit of a nosedive was in episode 2 during like the middle section. Now, it doesn't look like awful, but it definitely doesn't look as good as like the rest of it, and at least they did make up for it, for the ending fight of episode 2 was actually like really awesome. But otherwise, I do find it to be a pretty good looking anime OVA that was actually animated quite well. And as for the show's music, the music in this one is actually really awesome. So there's a lot of like really like awesome like guitar solos and stuff that just play throughout like all like the different fight scenes or any sort of like tense scene out there. I actually really dig that a lot. In fact, some of the riffs do kind of remind me of a game that came out a couple years later called Kensai Sacred Fist on PS1. It's not the greatest fighting game ever, but the music in it is very underrated and I love it a lot. And the fact that this show sort of reminds me of that, well, that's actually a really good thing to be compared to. The only unfortunate thing is that there's no opening theme song, but there is an ending theme, and I do like it. I think it is pretty catchy. But the background tracks, though, I think that's where it's at, and I really dig them a hell of a lot. And now, as for the show's voice acting, this one's only in Japanese, so as again, I can't really say any like specific stuff about like the acting being like good or bad. The only thing noteworthy that I can really say is that the voice of Akira happened to be played by Hiromi Saru, who also happened to play Naomi Hunter from the Metal Gear games, and she's done like a shit ton of other interesting stuff. but unfortunately, she passed away in the year 2017, but at least from the times that she was alive though, she played in like quite a lot of roles. But yeah, let's get moving on to my final thoughts, and I can say that, well, this is actually a pretty short review, but I mean, that's to be expected when you cover like a very basic story like this, but I can say that surprisingly, I kinda like this one more than I expected it to. So here's the thing. Yes, this anime is nothing like spectacular, nothing mind-blowing, nothing super original, and you know, that's fine by me. I mean, I don't think everything needs to be like that, but at the same time, I do think that this anime was actually pretty fun, and actually did make me care about the characters somewhat. For that, I did like the characterization between Natsuki, Rina, and even the mentor, who happens to be Yangasawa. Yeah, I didn't even mention him at all, but that's mainly because he gets a lot more screen time in episode 2, and well, episode 2 is the one that I just didn't really talk much about. Not because I didn't like it, but just because I felt like I explained everything I needed to say about episode 1, and you know, I didn't want to do the same shit for episode 2, because, you know, there's only 2 episodes, and I feel like if you are gonna watch this one, well, you might as well just watch it yourself, right? Rather than just hear me, like, re-explain everything that happens in it. But anyways, yeah, the mentor Yangasawa, he was actually had some pretty good chemistry with the 2 characters, and I actually did really like that. Now, like I said, like, there's only 2 episodes, so there's only so much character development that these characters can do, but even for these only 2 episodes, I think they did a pretty decent job, and it actually made me very interested in wanting to check out the manga series. So in case you're wondering, the manga series only has 18 volumes, and that means that there's quite a lot of stuff that never made it into the anime, which is a damn shame, because I think that this anime could have at least had like 3 or 2 more episodes, and I think it would have been a whole lot better. But even with just what we have though, I'm actually pretty happy that I watched it. For that, I thought it was just a good, simple, fun time. And another thing that I do really like about this one is that it's not overdone with the whole bullshit fan service content. Now yes, there is a couple scenes like this one right here where you do see some like upskirts and whatnot, but it's very minimal. And like I said, it doesn't overbear the story, and of course it doesn't try hard to be like super funny with like trying to throw in as much like shitty perverted jokes as possible. Because I'm not gonna lie, when I was first getting into this one, I was kind of expecting it to be like that a little bit, but no, it wasn't. And for that reason, I'm actually kind of glad, because it was actually more fun than that. Not that I have a problem with fan service content, I mean, it can be done sparingly and that's fine, but there's quite a lot of shows that I've seen before that just have so much like perverted jokes into them that are just so like not funny, and most of them are either just cringy or flat out dull. So thankfully, this anime does not fall into that trap. It may have some light scenes here and there that are a little bit fan servicey, but it barely qualifies. But enough about that shit though. So yeah, would I recommend this one? Well, if you do like martial arts animes and you want one that's more simple, short, and to the point, then yeah, I would actually recommend it. I actually think it was a good fun time. Now, keep in mind, like I said, it's not the most amazing shit ever, it's not the most original, and it's also not the greatest shit you'll ever see, but it's a mindless, fun, little obscure martial arts anime that barely gets talked about. And I'm sure that the manga is like probably way better, but for a 2-episode OVA that's based after one, you could do a lot worse, honestly. So with that being said, I probably do like this one more than most people would, but I personally found it to be pretty entertaining enough, and it did not overstay its welcome, and it was just a nice simple ride where I didn't have to think about too much, but was at least pleasing to the eye and pleasing to the ears too.